Well, this Sunday afternoon, it is number 2 Gonzaga against number 4 Kentucky. Of course, it is technically the first top 5 matchup of the college basketball season, although we'll see some movement in the rankings next week, of course. But this game coming Sunday is going to be played at the Spokane Arena. It's not at the Kennel, just a few minutes away. A little bit larger setting, of course. It's hosted March Madness game, seats just over 12,000 people. And this is a huge matchup, obviously. First matchup in a 6-game series that was just announced after this game was agreed on. And this is the only second matchup between Kentucky and Gonzaga. Of course, Kentucky won in the 2002 Maui Invitational, was 80-72. And this game just means a lot for both of these schools, particularly coming off of this week and how they both performed.
Yeah. I mean, we got already a pretty big matchup, maybe even bigger by, both teams losing marquee matchups to start the season. And the Zags beat Michigan State, but that disappointing loss to Texas makes this one a lot bigger. In terms of this series, I mean, last time they met was in the 2002-2003 season. It's almost unbelievable that it's gone this long without a matchup happening. But in that, since that Maui Invitational third place game 20 years ago, I mean, both these programs have been doing just fine. Zags with 4 Elite Eights and a couple Final Fours, both culminating in championship game losses. Kentucky 9 Elite Eights, 4 Final Fours, and the title in 2012. So both programs have been rolling since then. This year we got Timmy versus Shibwe. We got the premier matchup of individuals in NCAA basketball. Where that's going to be a huge one, of course. And this series kind of seemingly came out of nowhere. I mean, we had heard maybe chatter and hope of something like this happening, but when this one got announced, in the last few months, I know a lot of people were pretty excited to hear about that.
Definitely.
Spokane Arena, that's where the series will start off. It's not the normal home arena for the Zags, but I mean, it should be a fairly favorable crowd. Speaking from experience of going to a couple basketball games there, a couple Zags games there, it'll be a slightly muted environment, which is kind of surprising that it's twice as big, but you won't see quite the atmosphere in there. And I mean, I would bet there's a decent amount of Kentucky fans that make it in there too, so that should make it a pretty good atmosphere. And yeah, each team, I think they'll both be top tier, come season's end, but they're both looking for a nice signature win here to kind of quiet the doubters.
Yeah, definitely. I think both teams kind of came into this season with a chip on the shoulder. Of course, Kentucky's coming off that second round loss to 15 seeded St. Peter's, and Gonzaga's coming off a Sweet 16 exit to Arkansas, which when you have a Chet Holmgren on your team, that's not the result they wanted at all. So both teams really looking to kind of take advantage and kind of just still putting the pieces together early in the season. So both. Obviously, we have a Hall of Fame coach matchup in this game as well. Coach Calipari is going to enter with a record of 771 wins and 249 losses, assuming they take care of SC State tonight, which would be Thursday night. I have faith in them to do that. And Coach Few enters with a record of 660 wins and 130 losses. And, I think it's really interesting. There's kind of a contrasting style about how these guys go about performing each year. Kentucky, of course, had the number 5 recruiting class last year. They have the number 1 recruiting class for next year. And we know this is what Kentucky and Coach Cal do. They just reload every year. They get just an incredible roster of players, and they're always a ton of fun to watch. Where Gonzaga, on the other hand, typically is relying on more returning players and hitting the transfer market to fill in any gaps that they have, of course. So, and they did that this year with Malachi Smith and Efton Reed, who we'll get into in just a little bit. But on the season, Gonzaga is 2-1. Kentucky going to be 3-1 again, assuming they win that SC State game. And they're really both just looking to put things together in this young season. But Gonzaga in particular, I mean, you and I, we both obviously watched a ton of Gonzaga basketball. They really had some issues showing Wednesday night in a 93-74 loss to Texas. It was a true road game, but nonetheless, some true issues were shown.
Yeah, definitely not the performance that you wanted to see, for Zag fans hoping for, a repeat of the last few seasons. I mean, they'll obviously be fine. It's early on. And I mean, overall, these two teams, basically their whole season kind of boils down to the same common opponent with Michigan State, totally different environments. And the Zags snuck by after falling down 12 in the second half. They got by in that one by one. And Kentucky, if not for some late game mistakes, probably gets by Michigan State, as well. So really their results this year look very similar. And I mean, Calipari and Few, of course, have, a history going back to when Calipari was at Memphis. He's undefeated against the Zags, went 4-0 with Memphis as their coach. He had a kind of a thing about not playing at the Kennel then too. He played at Spokane Arena, wanted to play games in Seattle. But
Yep.
you got two premier coaches, both locks to be Hall of Famers, and Coach Calipari is probably the most prolific figure personality in college hoops right now.
I'd
So I
agree.
mean, from what we've seen so far, with the Zags, it's obviously a very talented roster. A lot of guys we're excited about, but they just haven't quite put it together on either end. So I mean, it's and Kentucky has looked, I thought they looked pretty good for a lot of the game against Michigan State, but I'm sure that one leaving a bad taste in a lot of their fans' mouths for how that one finished off.
Yeah, absolutely. We know they're not happy with that, but let's jump into the matchups we're going to see. Some really, really fun and I think multiple crucial matchups to how this game's going to be played out as well. So, starting at the point guard position, it should be, hopefully will be Nolan Hickman for the Zags. Of course, he did roll his ankle late in the Texas loss on Wednesday night. So we're still up in the air a little bit, seeing kind of how that plays out for him. But he is the Zags' typical starter this season, and Cason Wallace will be starting at point guard for Kentucky as well. Now, Kentucky fans, if you're not really familiar with Nolan Hickman, I think a lot of you will be, though, because actually Nolan Hickman originally had committed to Kentucky before decommitting and committing over at Gonzaga. So a lot of you are probably familiar, but he's a 6'2 sophomore point guard, was the number 33 recruit in high school. Last year he really played a backup role. We saw that role diminish as the season went on because Andrew Nembhard, of course, who is flourishing for the Indiana Pacers in the NBA this year, he really just took over the lion's share of the minutes. The deeper the season went, the more he played. But Nolan Hickman's been given the keys to this team this year. He's a young point guard, obviously has a lot of shoes to fill, and he's still kind of putting the pieces together. I think we've seen that particularly against Texas. But he's a very capable shooter. He's 44% on the young season. He's a crafty finisher. He's shown a lot of defensive flashes as well. But Cason Wallace, man, the Zag fans, if you have not seen him, take some time, go look up some highlights. You're going to want to know about this guy because you're going to hear about him a lot on Sunday. He's a 6'4 freshman guard out of Richardson, Texas, was the number 8 recruit last year. Gatorade Texas Player of the Year, McDonald's All-American. I mean, the guy had just a super long list of accolades in high school. And he's a do-it-all type of player, man. He's going to affect the game in every category. He's averaging 12.3 points a game, 6 assists, 5.3 rebounds, and 4 steals. Man, this guy, he's explosive. He's a good ball handler. He can finish through contact, a smooth shooter. And Zag fans, let me say this. He's a smart defender, and I think you're going to see flashes of Jalen Suggs with him in the passing lanes. He just really affects the game at every level.
Yeah, there are fair, Suggs comps for him at the college level. And as far as, Nolan Hickman goes, I mean, Zags, we're used to having solid scoring point guards, but not a true, scoring, a shoot first point guard like Hickman is. He's at his best kind of creating his own shots in his own space. As we saw against Texas and in the exhibition against Tennessee, like this is going to take some getting used to. The offense relies on working off of Timmy, one, true post guy. And that led to some pretty awkward passes and some easy buckets for Texas last night. The Zags kind of just trying to force the ball to Timmy wherever he happens to be. And, Hickman's going to have to get used to running the offense a little bit more as we go on throughout the season. And of course, with Hickman, we know he can shoot it. It's a matter of how does he do kind of getting into space and finding his teammates. And I think that'll come as the season goes along. And as you mentioned, he got hurt late in that Texas game. Hopefully he's okay. But if he's not, we expect Malachi Smith, the Chattanooga transfer, and Hunter Salas, who saw some decent minutes for the Zags last year, and he's been good for them so far this year. I think we'll see both of them work in at point guard a little bit. Smith is a little more seasoned offensively. He's more of a do-it-all scorer. Salas, a capable scorer, but he hasn't really been asked to do a whole lot of that for the Zags so far. He's more of the lockdown defender type, and I think that's going to lead to him probably getting some extended run in this game with Wallace, with needing somebody to match up with Wallace. I think we'll see plenty of, Smith and Salas regardless, but I think that's kind of going to be the direction it goes with somebody that's so dangerous in transition. I think that the Zags are going to end up doing a point guard by committee, whether Hickman's available or not. And basically the player that defends Wallace best will probably be the one that kind of sticks in this game. And yeah, I think this will be one that we see. I think this will be one that we see Smith kind of find his rhythm offensively. I think Kentucky, very tough team defensively. They're going to take you out of your rhythm. You're going to need more of those off schedule buckets. And I think Smith will be huge for that.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Like you said, it is a crucial matchup containing Cason Wallace because he can take over a game in the blink of an eye. So moving to the shooting guard position, of course, for the Zags, you have Rasir Bolton versus CJ Frederick for Kentucky. CJ, of course, a transfer from Iowa. He's a bit familiar with the Zags. Of course, they played just a couple years ago, but Rasir Bolton is a 6'3" senior, a leader on this Zags team. He's averaging 10 points a game, shooting 50% from three this year. He's the best shooter on this team without question. He averaged 46% last year on 139 attempts. He's got plus speed, especially in transition. He's generally one of the quickest players on the court. And he acts as a secondary ball handler, which again, back to the point about Hickman being hurt, I think we could see that as well, just as some additional ball handling from Bolton. And he's a good perimeter defender as well. I think that kind of gets overlooked with him. Is he? I don't think he's necessarily the defender that's going to match up as well with Cason Wallace, but when it comes to CJ Frederick, that's a really good matchup. Bolton's really quick and he's going to stay in his hip pocket for sure. But Frederick is a 6'3" guard, of course, like I said, transfer from Iowa, having a great season so far. He's averaging 13 points a game on 52% shooting, career 46% shooter. He's brought in to be a sniper on this team. We know his role, of course, in Kentucky. You do have to play some defense to stay on the court. So that is a new task for him, really. Iowa was not known as a defensive team. And he, like I said, played Gonzaga back in 2020, had 8 points on 2 of 7 shooting, 4 fouls, of course. The defense wasn't there for him then. I think he's made improvements in that category. But this is, again, a matchup that, if you're the Zags, I think the Zags want to win this matchup. I think it's one that they feel they can. But if you let Frederick go, I mean, he can hurt you in a flash.
Yeah. Of course, the Zags fans saw him before. Not really a fair assessment with how bad that Iowa team was on defense. So we really couldn't read anything from that. And these two have actually met before when they were at Iowa and Iowa State, where Bolton played a couple of years ago. They both played 30 plus minutes in that game in December 2019. Frederick had a good game with 11 points. Bolton was off, just 2 of 10 shooting. Frederick's the obvious obvious 3-point shooting option. I mean, they have other guys that can shoot it, but he's the one that's going to be spotting up out there. They're going to be, running plays to get him looks. So the Zags will really be tested staying in front of him. As we saw with the 3-point defense, against Texas, that's gonna have us a little jumpy, I think, going into that one. But hopefully they can stay, as you said, hopefully Bolton can stay in his hip pocket, stick with him, and defensive effort's going to be big in this one. So I also think Bolton, he's been playing within himself on offense. He hasn't really had a big game yet, but, I don't know how much we expect, in terms of huge games out of him this year with the balance this team has. But he's been playing with himself and, within himself. And I think that he'll see some extended time as the primary ball handler if Hickman's out or struggling, or if Salas isn't having a good game.
Definitely. He does feel like he's due for a game where, he kind of goes off. It's real easy for him to get 5-6 threes in a game. Same can be said for Frederick. So it's going to be really interesting to see which team can, get their shooter to really step up and help him out going into it. So at the small forward position, though, we have Julian Strother and Chris Livingston. Now, if you look at just stats, let's say you just look at stats, you might think that the Zags have a big advantage in this matchup. But I think this is, again, a really crucial matchup. Stats do not tell the story in this. Julian Strother, of course, is a 6'7" junior. He's really looked to be that second scorer for the Zags behind Timmy. He's averaging 14 points a game, 7 rebounds, and 2 steals per game so far. Really known to be a perimeter threat for the Zags. He's 42% from 3 this year. Was a great shooter last year. But he's really been looking to expand his game this year. We've seen him attacking the rim a lot more, which has been, a benefit to his game, and a really active defender as well. And for Zag fans, Chris Livingston, again, freshman for Kentucky, 6'6", just a very solid built freshman out there. He was the number 12 recruit in the country last year. So when you see his stats, do not think this is just a role player for Kentucky. I just think he's still adjusting to the college game right now. He's averaging 5 points and 5 rebounds, but I think he's probably the biggest breakout candidate on this team, just kind of waiting to find his step. Cason Wallace has done that right away. Livingston's right behind him. He was the 2022 Gatorade Virginia Player of the Year, McDonald's All-American, of course. Man, this guy, you cannot let him get going towards the rim. He's one of those bodies and those physical presences out there that if you let him get momentum, you're not going to stop him. That's just not the case. You don't have a Chet, you don't have a Brandon Clark anymore. If he gets to the rim, he's going to put pressure on the Zags. And he's actually a really solid shooter as well. He's shooting 40% from 3 this year. It's a smooth, clean looking shot. It's not what he's going to look to do, but another guy that you can't leave open, and he's great at using his length defensively again. So I think this is a really, really tough matchup for Strother. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah. So far, Strother's been pretty good. He's been consistent. He's 5 of 12 from 3 to start the year, averaging 14 and about 7. And really, he was kind of the figurehead of the Zags' performance at Texas. He shot it pretty well, but he didn't take care of the ball. Just 1 assist to 4 turnovers. Had an overall pretty rough game. But this is a really good matchup for him with Livingston. Really, you kind of look at it as like a nightmare matchup for Julian Strother. It's a Livingston, I agree with you. He seems like a breakout candidate, probably ready to break out any game. That'd be a huge issue for the Zags if they don't match his physicality. And that's going to be, I think an issue going into this game overall is how do the Zags kind of match Kentucky's energy? And this matchup is as good of a, representation of that as any. And I'm interested to see how Strother does in this one against the defense. And like a lot of his minutes are going to come against Livingston. And defending Livingston, I think that it'll be problematic for him because he won't just be able to kind of sag back and try to absorb him. He'll have to actually guard him out on the perimeter. So, I mean, that's about as tough of a matchup as you could put on Julian Strother for someone who's, relative, I don't want to say unproven, but compared to a lot of the guys on his team. And, he's relatively unknown, compared to a lot of Zag fans, I would say. So look, I would say look for Livingston to have a decent game. If they can contain him, it probably means good things for the Zags. And yeah, between Livingston and Strother, I think they both have big futures ahead of them. I mean, this game isn't make or break for NBA prospects or anything, but for both of them, it's a pretty good test for where they're at in their development.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with you on that. And moving to the power forward position, we have Anton Watson versus Jacob Toppin. Of course, Watson is a 6'8" senior, the do-it-all guy for the Zags. He's averaging 7 points a game, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, and 1 block. Really does everything. He's not a flashy defender, but he's very, very solid. Analytics love his defense year in and year out. I think he really stays in his game offensively. You're not going to see him try to take over a game offensively. He does what he does best, and he's a good finisher at the rim. If you leave him open, we've seen him expand his mid-range game, occasionally step out to that 3-point line as well, but really just holds the starters together. And for Jacob Toppin, he's a 6'9" senior, of course, the younger brother of current New York Knick, Obi Toppin. He's averaging 11 points a game this year, 7.7 rebounds, 1.7 steals a game. I think Toppin's got a really well-rounded game. He's smooth in the mid-range. We've seen him with the turnaround jumper a few times this season, and he's capable 3-point shooter. And he's a good help side defender with plus length. So, again, with all the talent on Kentucky, I don't think this is a matchup where you see either of these guys take over a game. But I think all the little things that each of them can do could really make or break this game.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like maybe the least conspicuous of all these starter matchups, but it's probably about as important as any of them. If either of these guys let the other have a good game, then it could be big trouble for their defense. And Watson, he's the kind of guy, for Kentucky fans that aren't as familiar with him, I would say as an opposing fan, you could probably not even notice him, the whole game. But at the end of the game, he puts up a decent line and has a pretty good effect. He'll tip passes, he'll change passes and shots. I mean, he kind of does all the little things without being a flashy or like obvious, in first round NBA draft pick or something like that. And as far as Toppin, not a whole lot to add to what you said. I mean, he's kind of a theme of this Kentucky defense, good help side defender with plus length. We've said that before going through these Kentucky starters,
It's
and
a
it's
theme
just
for
going to be
sure.
kind of, yeah, it's going to be emblematic kind of their defense. I don't think there's going to be anything easy for the Zags. I think that they'll
Hmm.
have to fight for everything. And I think that with Toppin, he's another fairly well-rounded guy that you can't sag off, you can't face guard. You've got to be able to defend them in multiple ways. You can't just kind of corner them into doing one thing and take their game away. They're able to do multiple things on offense, and Toppin's just another player with that versatility.
Yeah, yeah, it makes for a tough roster to defend, man, when everyone can do everything. But moving into the center position, as you said, it's really a premier player versus player matchup. It is, of course, Drew Timmy versus Oscar Shibwe. Obviously we can make a whole video just on this matchup. You don't have enough time to say everything. They both have an incredibly long list of accolades, but Drew Timmy is a 6'10 senior, the unquestioned leader on the Zags team. He's averaging 21 points a game, 8 rebounds, 2 assists per game, shooting 60% from the field, which is actually down a little bit from last year. He's one of the best finishers at the rim in college basketball, and it's not above the rim, it's at the rim, because he has the best post footwork in the country. That is really unquestioned. I think at this point, I think everybody who watches him is on board with that. It's just truly fun to watch him and his footwork. He's going to draw a ton of double teams down low in most matchups. It's going to be interesting to see how Kentucky plays out, of course, because you have Oscar Shibwe, who's a 6'9", 260-pound senior. I mean, this is just a mammoth of a man down low, coming off a huge season, of course. He won unanimous player of the year, first team All-American, led the country in rebounds with just over 15 a game, and offensive rebounds with just over 5 a game. This is going to be his second time playing Gonzaga and Drew Timmy. Of course, in 2020, he was with West Virginia. He had 14 points and 9 rebounds before fouling out. So, he is familiar with Drew Timmy and with that footwork that we talked about. He's just returning from injury rehab. Of course, Michigan State was his first game back, and he did exactly what you expect Oscar Shibwe to do. He had 22 points, 18 rebounds, and 4 blocks. It's just crazy. His game is massively improved year after year. He completely changes Kentucky's defense when he's in this game. His offensive game has expanded as well. He can absolutely bully teams if you do not push him off the block early.
Yeah, I mean, bully is a good word to use for Oscar Shibwe. I mean, the guy's an absolute monster inside. I mean, I love the contrast in styles between these two players. I mean, can't even come up with the words for how exciting this matchup is overall. We've wanted to see it for a while. We've seen it before. And I think that the way that this went when Shibwe was at West Virginia will be kind of a game plan for how the Zags want to handle this time.
Mm-hmm.
Timmy was having a lot of trouble scoring inside. There were already all the calls of, can he play physical? Can he score against more physical teams? And then Shibwe got into more foul trouble as the game went on. Timmy also fouled out, but Timmy was able to stay in and have an effect the whole game, whereas Shibwe was spending most of it on the bench. So I think Oscar on the bench is something that Zag fans want to see. That's something that's absolutely going to be part of the Gonzaga game plan going in. Getting him off of the boards and off the defensive end as a rim protector. The only way to do that is to get him off of the court. As long as he's playing, he's going to be an absolute monster. He's going to be
Absolutely.
a problem for everyone on the court for the Zags. So their entire game plan is going to revolve around getting him in foul trouble, because that's really the only option they've got against one of the most dominant post presences in college basketball recent history. So
Yeah, I agree with
I
that.
think that I think that, yeah, to just get into one more point on this from what we saw in the Texas game last night, I think that an interesting factor here is, how does Kentucky defend Timmy? We know that Shibwe is going to be on him. Do they face guard him up near the top like Texas did? We've seen more physical teams do to the Zags. Or do they sag Shibwe back to make sure he's the rebounding force and rim protector that they know that he is? I think that'll have a huge effect in the game, how they decide to defend Timmy. I think they'll just play it straight up, kind of like Texas did, and I'll be interested to see how the Zags counter that.
Definitely. It's a matchup that, again, whoever wins this matchup likely puts their team in a really good position. And like you said, I think Kentucky has more ways to win that matchup than Gonzaga does. So it's going to be interesting to see who can execute that the best moving into Sunday. And on the bench for each team, of course, I think both teams, you obviously have good bench players. It's Kentucky. Gonzaga's got a deep roster as well. For Kentucky, you've mentioned obviously Malachi Smith and Hunter Salas already. These are two guards who are going to see more minutes. Even if Hickman's healthy, we know he's probably not going to be 100%. So they're going to see more minutes. Of course, Malachi Smith, transfer from Chattanooga, was the SoCon player of the year last year. Predominantly played point guard for them, averaged just over 20 points a game. So like you said, a very seasoned offensive player. He's been coming off the bench for the Zags this year, and this could really be a game where he's asked to do a lot more, and that's going to be big for him. And Hunter Salas, like you said, is an absolute lockdown defender, 6'5", long wingspan. We've seen him cause havoc for really good players. JD Note in the tournament last year, of course, Arkansas did win that, but Note was 9 of 29 from the field, if I remember right, and Salas was on him for a lot of that. So Salas can really affect a game on that end of the court. And then, of course, you have Efton Reed. Again, Efton Reed has seen Sheboy and Kentucky. He came from LSU. He's been a really, really solid rotational player off the bench for the Zags. And his defense, again, is going to be needed going into this. And for Kentucky, they have two bench players in particular I want to cover because you're going to need to know them. And it is Severe Wheeler. He is a senior point guard, started 29 of 30 games last year for Kentucky. Of course, he's coming off the bench this year. We'll see how they adjust their roster. He, of course, was hurt for the season opener. So this will be his third game back, I believe. But this is one of the best facilitators. This is the best facilitator in college basketball coming off the bench right now. He's one of the best in college basketball, but by far the best off the bench. He's averaging 13.5 points a game, 9.5 assists, and 2 steals. This guy's a plus ball handler. He really allows Wallace to move off the ball, and he's a really, really good pick and rolled ball handler that can just absolutely punish defenses. And then you have Antonio Reeves. He's a 6'5" senior guard, transfer from Illinois State. Reeves averaged 20 points a game last year. So this guy can get buckets out there. He's averaging just over 12 a game this year for Kentucky. And really, so far, he's kind of been another sniper for them next to Frederick. He's shooting 52% this year on 7 attempts from 3. I think he's really just flourishing next to the driving ability of Wallace and Wheeler. And then, of course, when you have a mammoth of a man like Oscar Tshiebwe who can pull down the offensive rebounds he does, a shooter of Reeves' caliber really benefits from those kickouts as well.
Yeah, for Kentucky's bench, I mean, they really show the depth and the potential this team has when, a couple of guys that you're bringing off the bench are a proven scorer like Reeves and a facilitator like Wheeler. It really shows what this team is capable of. And yeah, for the Gonzaga bench, of course, we already got into Smith and Salas. I think they're going to be huge factors. And the other player that we know will play for the Zags will be Efton Reed. He's already got, he's going to have to kind of spell Timmy. There's no way that I see Timmy playing, 30 plus efficient minutes in this game. Just hard to do as a big, especially when you're going against elite bigs on the other end. So I think Reed's going to be a factor in this game one way or another. He hasn't fared well against Tshiebwe in the past, and there are a couple of matchups earlier this year when Reed was at LSU. But basically anything the Zags can get out of him, they'll be happy if he can come in and spell Timmy. And yeah, I think that these two teams, I mean, the depth that they both have, it's really exciting that we're going to see a bunch of matchups that we probably didn't even talk about here today with how the players will be shuffled around.
Definitely. There's never enough time to cover everything in these, of course, but let's move into the predictions. I know everyone's curious. How is this game going to play out? For Gonzaga, again, we talked about some crucial matchups, but Wallace and Wheeler, I think, really, really present some real issues for Nolan Hickman if he plays, and the Zags, really just the Zags guards in general. Both are more than capable of applying pressure on both ends, and we've kind of seen how the Zags have, handled that pressure early in the season here. The Zags need to win the Frederick matchup. I think that's what it comes down for them. It's the one matchup I think that they have a clear path to winning. And for Kentucky, obviously Sheboy's back, and that completely changes their team, how they've looked this year. But we've also seen how their team looks without Sheboy. we saw the rebounding when he's off the court. We've seen the rebounding. Of course, Michigan State out rebounded them for the game, even with the 18 that Sheboy had. I mean, Zach, give me your thoughts on this, man. How do you think this game's playing out?
Well, I mean, I think that we're going to see a lot of the same ball pressure from Kentucky that we saw against Texas. And of course, they have the athletes and the talent to execute it. I mean, really, the big theme of this game to me is how different these teams are without their star big man. Kentucky, as you're saying, without Oscar, the Zags without Timmy are just, as far as we know, a completely different team. They have no identity, not a real fleshed out plan without Timmy. So I think that the big factor in this game, and you hate to say it with college basketball, but it's going to be how is that matchup officiated? How are things officiated inside in general? Because I think that I just want to see these two guys battle it out for like 35 minutes each and just go at it inside. I think that the Zags will have an answer to the ball pressure that we know we're going to see. I'm hoping they have something up their sleeve. We know they have the players to pull it off. So I think the Zags will have some answer for that. I think the home crowd will get the Zags out of there with a one possession win, something like 77-75.
All right. All right. I'm thinking along the same lines as you. I think for me, I think what it comes down to is I think the Zags are going to be able to get Sheboy off the court at least for some amount of time. And I think they're actually going to be able to win the rebounding matchup when he's off the court. And that's going to do big things for them. So Kentucky fans, you probably won't like it. I'm right with you, though. I think the Zags are going to pull this one out. I think it's going to be a little bit more fast paced. I'm going to go 82-77 Zags this Sunday in Spokane. Number 2 versus number 4. I know us and all of college basketball is excited to see this matchup.